I decided to spend this summer at our family's old cabin, which was hidden deep in the woods of Washington that year. This was a place that had been constructed several decades ago by my great-grandpa, but further modifications were made by my grandpa, father, and me over time. It was unassuming but contained many memories. I needed to step away from urban living, relax, and take some pictures of wildlife. To keep me company, I brought along my border collie, Max. He was always down for an adventure, and I knew he'd dig the open space and woods to roam around. The 5-hour drive was smooth, and when I finally arrived, I was greeted by the serene silence of nature. I unloaded my gear and settled in. The cabin ran on solar power, but I had a generator handy for emergencies. The first night was peaceful. Max and I scoped out the property, making sure everything was copacetic. I whipped up a simple dinner on the gas stove and read a bit before hitting the sack. Max was his usual self, and I drifted off without a hitch. The next morning I got to work doing some maintenance around the cabin, mowed the lawn, tidied up the fire pit, and fixed a few odds and ends. Max seemed cool, but I noticed he'd freeze and stare into the woods every now and then. Figured he spotted some critter, maybe a deer or a rabbit. As the sun started to set, I headed back inside, cooked up something quick, and settled down with a book. Max, though, was restless, pacing and growling every so often. It started getting under my skin. Checked all the doors and windows were locked tight. Had a rifle and a revolver for security and kept them close. That night, I heard something weird. Lying in bed trying to sleep, I caught a rustling outside. Max started growling, and I snapped to attention. Grabbed the revolver, went to the window. Didn't see a thing, but the noise kept up. Sounded like something was pacing around the cabin. Flicked on the outdoor lights, no dice. After a while, the sound died down, and I managed to nod off again. The next day, I patrolled the property line. Max was on edge, eyeing the woods like they owed him money. Checked the fence, found it busted in a couple of spots. Looked like something big had pushed through. Jotted down what needed fixing and headed back to the cabin. While I whipped up lunch, Max started barking like crazy. Rushed to the kitchen window, saw something moving fast between the trees. It was big, but I couldn't make out what it was. Grabbed the rifle, stepped outside with Max by my side, yelled out, let him know I was locked and loaded, but got no reply. The forest went dead quiet. Out of nowhere, something flew at me. A branch crashed down a few feet away. Scanned around, tried to spot where it came from, but nada. Then more branches and rocks started raining down. Max was going nuts, running in circles. Fired a shot in the air, hoping to scare whatever it was off. Silence fell for a beat. Rushed back inside, locked down all doors and windows. Max and I were shook. Trying to understand what the hell was going on during the remaining part of the day was fruitless. Night rolled in, and with it, the fear. Fired up the generator, kept every light blazing. While I cooked dinner, Max started barking again. Bolted to the kitchen, saw something peering at me through the window. Glowing eyes in the dark. I yelled, whipped out the revolver, but when I spun around, there was nothing there. Went to the door, looked outside, still zilch. Started wondering if I was losing it. That night, I tossed and turned. Heard noises all around the cabin, and Max was still on edge. Come morning, I figured I needed to get to the bottom of this. Grabbed the rifle, Max on my heels. Found strange tracks near the creek. Big, odd-shaped prints. Something was definitely out there. While I checked out the tracks, heard a noise. A branch snapped and smacked me in the arm. Max went ballistic, barking and growling. Spun around, gun ready. Saw nothing, but the noise kept on. Sounded like something hauling ass through the trees. Squeezed off a shot in the direction of the sound, but came up empty. Ran back to the cabin, Max at my side. Locked the door, started boarding up the windows. Day crawled by, and night fell again. I was beat, but knew I couldn't sleep. Out of the blue, heard glass shatter. Sprinted to the kitchen, saw the window busted. A hairy, massive hand was reaching in. Grabbed the revolver, let loose a shot, hitting the hand. Blood-curdling scream, and the hand vanished. Shaking like a leaf, but knew I had to keep my wits. Spent the rest of the night on high alert, Max by my side. Nothing else happened, but I knew it was still out there. When the sun finally came up, decided it was time to bail. Packed my gear quick, hit the road. Max seemed relieved to hop in the car, and I felt a rush of relief watching the cabin fade in the rear view. Got back to town, spilled the beans to my dad. He came right over, and we headed straight to the sheriff's office. Laid out the whole ordeal, and the sheriff promised to send a team out to investigate. Waited it out in the car with Max, trying to calm my nerves. When Dad got back, we hit the sheriff up again, and he reported that other people in the area had had similar run-ins. Helped Dad patch up what we could, but decided I wasn't staying there solo ever again. Back in town, I was still spooked. Couldn't shake what I'd seen and heard. Dug into the area online, looking for any clue to what was going down. Found stories about weird sightings in the Washington woods, but nothing solid. Some folks talked about Bigfoot-type beings, others about spirits or supernatural stuff. None of it quite matched up with what I'd seen, but the feeling of being watched stuck with me. Figured I needed backup. Called up my buddy Jack, a seasoned hunter who knew the area inside out. Laid out the tale, and though he was skeptical, he agreed to roll with me back to the cabin. The next day, he pulled in with all his gear, cameras, motion detectors, the works. Back at the cabin, Jack set up the cameras while I beefed up the window barricades. Max seemed more chill with Jack around, but still on high alert. Night rolled in, and we settled in for a long stakeout. We sat in the living room, eyes glued to the camera feeds. Hours dragged by, silence pressing in. Then, out of nowhere, one of the cameras caught movement. Something big and dark streaked across the screen. Jack and I exchanged looks, grabbed our guns and made a move for the door. Stepping out, the night was cold and quiet. Crept along, trying not to make a peep. Lantern beams cut through the dark, but we saw nada. Suddenly, a snap of a branch caught our attention. We turned toward the sound, saw a shadow flitting through the trees. Jack raised his gun, shouted at whatever it was to freeze. The shadow paused for a sec, then vanished into the black. We gave chase, but it slipped away. We stopped in our tracks, panting and alert. Scoped around, looking for any sign of our quarry. Felt eyes on us. Spun around fast, but nothing there. Jack suggested we head back to the cabin, review the footage. Agreed. Headed back slow, keeping our guard up. When we got there, we checked the cameras. Caught sight of the shadow again. Tall, almost human, but off somehow. Seemed like it was watching us, studying our moves. Spent the rest of the night on high alert, but no more action. Come morning, Jack decided we'd rig up some traps around the property. He was hell-bent on figuring out what we were dealing with. I pitched in, though fear still had its grip on every move I made. Late afternoon, Jack suggested we set up a makeshift camp in the woods near the traps. He wanted to lure the critter out. Reluctantly agreed. Packed essentials, hiked out by one of the creeks. Max seemed calmer, maybe because we were away from the cabin, but still watchful. Night fell fast, and with it, the oppressive silence of the woods. Sat round a small fire, trying not to draw too much attention. Time crawled by, every sound amplified in the darkness. Then, a loud crack echoed out. One of the traps had gone off. We sprinted to the noise, guns at the ready. When we got there, saw the trap had snagged something big. The critter was caught, thrashing to get free. Jack and I edged closer, trying to make sense of what we were seeing. It was tall, muscular, covered in thick, dark fur. Its eyes glowed with a rage I couldn't fathom. Before we could react, the critter let out a bone-chilling roar, ripped itself free with a strength that blew our minds. We bolted back to the camp, keeping a safe distance. The critter gave chase for a sec, then disappeared into the dark. Shaking with fear, Jack and I agreed it was time to retreat to the cabin, rethink our strategy. We made it back at dawn, exhausted and rattled. Spent the day trying to process what we'd witnessed and how to handle it. Jack floated the idea of calling in reinforcements, maybe a cryptid expert or a squad of seasoned hunters. Agreed, but something inside told me it wouldn't be enough. That night we were chilling in the living room when a familiar noise reached us. Something was moving around the cabin again. Grabbed our guns, went to the door, ready for a showdown. Flung it open, and there it was, standing in the middle of the yard, those glowing eyes fixed on us. It didn't move, just stared like it was waiting for something. Jack advanced and told the critter to back off. It replied nothing, just kept staring. Out of the blue, it leaped high and disappeared into the forest. We remained there cold, incapable of understanding anything at that moment. Spent the rest of the night on high alert, but the critter didn't return. Come morning, we decided it was time to bail. Packed up quick, hit the road. Max was relieved to hop in the car, and I felt a wave of relief watching the cabin disappear in the rear view. Back in town, we gave the lowdown to the sheriff again. He promised to send a team to investigate, but I knew they wouldn't find squat. Whatever that critter was, it was smart and knew how to stay hidden. Nightmares plagued me. Sleep was scarce. I couldn't shake the memory of those events. The nightmares eased over time, but the feeling of being watched never left entirely. The cabin experience changed me forever. Knew I'd never set foot in those woods alone again, and the mystery of what lurked there would haunt me forever. Whenever I narrate the story to people, they look at me with bewilderment due to disbelief. Some of them even think I am lying or overreacting. However, the terror was genuine, and I saw exactly what happened. The mysteries hidden within the Washington forest could be impossible to unravel. I am not the only one who has had a frightening encounter with something that cannot be identified. Now, when I hear a strange noise at night, I'm reminded of that cabin. I have never returned there alone since then, because I cannot help thinking of who or what might have been observing us. The feeling caused by fear or uncertainty is intense indeed, and I got to experience it firsthand. Please like and subscribe if you are enjoying. My name's Jake Miller. I'm head of security at Ashwood Institute, tucked away deep in the Oregon forest. My job's simple. Watch the facility, make sure nobody gets in without permission, and handle any problems that pop up. The Institute's in an isolated spot, surrounded by an ancient forest and an old abandoned mining site. Routine was quiet, and I liked the peace isolation brought. Every night I'd clock in at 10 p.m., passed through the main gate, grabbed a strong cup of coffee, and settled into my small security office. Hunter, my loyal Belgian Malinois, was always by my side. We'd do regular patrols around the Institute perimeter. Nights were calm, maybe interrupted by distant coyote howls or the wind through the trees. Local teens sometimes tried sneaking in for fun, but Hunter's presence scared them off quickly. On a rainy night, everything changed. Rain hammered on the metal roof as a horrible smell, rotting meat and wet earth, filled the air. Hunter, usually calm, got restless. His fur stood on end, growling at the darkness beyond the window. Something seemed wrong, although I couldn't tell what it was. I wore my raincoat, took my flashlight, and walked outside around 3 a.m., followed by Hunter, who was around. The stench grew stronger as we walked, and we stumbled upon a mutilated deer carcass. Its hind legs were ripped off, blood soaking the ground. It was a disturbing sight. Figured it was a wild predator's doing. We buried the remains and headed back, not knowing it was just the start. Over the next few days, strange things happened. Unusual noises echoed through the halls. Shadows flickered across security monitors, and the smell lingered. Hunter grew more restless, his instincts sensing danger I couldn't see. One night, there were heavy footsteps on the roof. Checked it out, found nothing. No intruders, no logical explanation. Then came Sunday. A deafening crash shattered the night silence, and Hunter started barking like mad. Rushed to the source, a broken window at the lab's rear. Hunter was desperate to get out, and when I opened the door, he bolted into the forest. I followed, trying to keep up. We reached a spot near the old mine where the darkness felt thicker. Hunter suddenly stopped, growling at something I couldn't see. Shined my flashlight, caught movement among the trees. A muscular arm emerged from the darkness and grabbed Hunter, snapping his neck with a sickening crack. My heart stopped, panic flooding me. The creature turned toward me, an odd mix of man and beast, before I could react. I froze, didn't know what to do. Legs felt glued to the ground. The creature moved closer, each step making the ground tremble. Needed to run, but where? Only option was to dart past it and head back to the Institute. I gasped for air, then ran as swiftly as I could, but my speed was not enough. I felt a strong hand seize my shirt and pull me backward. I hit the ground hard, pain shooting through my back. The creature was on top of me, its crushing weight pinning me down. I struggled, trying to break free, like fighting a solid wall. Managed to turn my head and saw its face. Not human, not entirely animal either. Glowing red eyes stared into the darkness, full of a sinister intelligence. Terrified. The creature seemed to study me, deciding what to do. Then it lifted me and hurled me against a tree. Pain exploded in my back, and everything went black. I woke up in the hospital, body battered but alive. Doctors said I had a spinal fracture. Miracle I survived. They thought it was a bear attack, but I knew the truth. That thing, whatever it was, wasn't a bear. Red eyes and superhuman strength were like nothing I'd ever seen. Spent weeks in the hospital trying to make sense of it. Always a skeptic. Had to see to believe. But now, I'd seen something beyond logic. That creature shouldn't exist. But it did. And it killed Hunter, my faithful partner. The hardest part to accept. Tried explaining to doctors and cops, but how do you explain the unexplainable? They figured shock, imagining things. Maybe easier for them to believe that than the truth. But I knew what I saw, and I knew that thing was still out there. Finally got discharged. Knew life wouldn't be the same. Couldn't go back to Ashwood Institute. That part of my life was over, but couldn't move on like nothing happened either. Knew too much. Knew the world was stranger and more dangerous than I ever imagined. Decided I needed to learn more about that creature. Understand what it was and where it came from. Started researching, reading up on local legends and weird sightings. Talked to old-timers, folks who'd lived in the area for generations. Many had stories of unexplainable things in the forest, but none had seen what I had. The more I dug, the more I realized I was dealing with something ancient, something that existed long before us. The forest around Ashwood Institute held mysteries, and I'd only scratched the surface. The creature that attacked me and killed Hunter wasn't alone. There were more like it out there, waiting, watching. The hunt for answers led me back to Ashwood Institute. Knew it was risky, but had to face my fears. Arrived at dusk, armed with a strong flashlight and a metal bat. The place was empty, abandoned since the incident. Silence was heavy, every step echoing in the empty halls. Followed the same path as that fateful night, into the forest. Darkness felt denser, horrible stench of rotting flesh still in the air. Scared, but determined. Needed to know the truth. Reached the spot where Hunter died. The ground was still stained with dried blood. Shined the flashlight into the forest, searching for any sign of movement. Then I saw it. Red eyes glowing in the darkness. Heart raced, but this time I was ready. The creature emerged again, stepping out of the shadows. We locked eyes, its red gaze fixed on mine. Fear surged, but I didn't back down. Was there to confront the unknown, understand what haunted me. The creature took a step forward, and I raised the bat, ready to defend myself. But instead of attacking, it stopped. We stood there, face to face. Then, something happened. The creature backed away, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. Alone again, but something had changed. Didn't know what it meant, but felt the creature had tested me, challenged me to face my fears. And I'd passed the test. I left the forest with a new understanding. But now I knew I could face it. I wasn't alone in my fear anymore. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to uncover the mysteries hiding in the dark. The woods behind my grandparents' house have always held a fascination for me from early childhood. The tall trees, winding streams, and damp earth smells have always made me tranquil. The moment I headed to the urban areas, it dawned on me that the bond between us was broken, and there were several missing links. The forest remained the source of peace. No matter how many people moved around in their hurry, it could not be replaced by any noise from vehicles nearby or sounds coming from pedestrians outside your window. Even when feeling lonely or lost, there is always something soothing about it, hence should not leave anytime soon, because there would never be another just like that while alive on Earth ever again. Hence, when it came time for me to visit my grandparents, I never hesitated. I woke up before dawn on the first morning. I sensed fresh air around while the sun was beginning its journey up the sky. I carried with me in my bag some snacks, water, and a first aid kit. The forest was a safe place, but I knew being prepared never hurt. The hike started peacefully. The sound of birds singing, the crunch of dry leaves under my feet, everything was familiar. There was a seldom used trail that I loved to follow. It led to a hidden valley, surrounded by towering trees. It was like a secret sanctuary where I could escape from everything. As I walked, I noticed something strange on the ground. They were huge footprints, unlike anything I had ever seen. I crouched down to examine them closer. The size was impressive, and the shape was unusual. Those were definitely not the tracks of a bear or any other animal known to man in this region. My heart leaped into my throat, and a shudder ran through me. Something was wrong. I continued on my way, but now with a sense of alertness. Every little sound made me stop and look around. The wind rustled the leaves of the trees, and the forest, once so welcoming, seemed to hide something ominous. I followed the trail, but with each step, I felt a presence watching me. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. It was like the crack of branches under something heavy. I stopped, trying to pinpoint the origin. My heart was pounding, and my instincts told me to be cautious. I kept walking, now slower, each step meticulously calculated. That's when I saw a shadow move among the trees. It was quick, almost impossible to track. I stood still, my eyes fixed on that spot. When the shadow reappeared, it was closer, and I could distinguish a huge creature, covered in dark fur, with long, muscular arms. Its presence was threatening, and a primal fear gripped me. The creature looked at me, its eyes reflecting an unsettling intelligence. It wasn't just an animal. There was an inexplicable extra element that I did not know. I felt I should leave the place at once, so I slowly withdrew my eyes from it. As soon as it crossed in moving closer, the step made by the thing immediately activated my flight or fight response, as my only aim became how to survive. I then found myself turning back, running away as the ground shook heavily from the sounds of someone following me. In addition, the moments that followed were defined with the rapid beating of my heart, as every step taken was fueled by adrenaline running through my veins so fast that everything became a blur. It appeared as if branches and roots were out there to make me fall down, because the terrain was full of those that looked as if they were trying to make me stumble. But fear was stronger, and I kept going. I reached a clearing. I looked back and saw the creature standing at the edge of the forest, looking at me. It didn't advance, just stood there, as if that clearing were a boundary it couldn't cross. Relief washed over me, but fear still lingered. What was that? Why did it let me go? I returned to my grandparents' house, breathless, trying to find words to describe what I had seen. They listened attentively, their faces serious. My grandfather got up, went to the window, and stared out at the forest. He began to recount old stories about beings that inhabited those woods, legends that I had always considered mere myths. To them, they were cautionary tales, but now to me, they were real. I did all I could to stay away from the forest in the next couple of days. No matter how many times I walked around the village, I always had a feeling that there was someone trailing behind me closely. I would wake up every night several times because of the same dream that made me fear going to sleep at all. But this monster kept on flashing before my eyes, having its sharp sight on me alone. The moment I bade farewell, I was filled with a cocktail of relief and sorrow. My forest that was once my sanctuary now is nothing but eerie darkness. I was unsure if it had been real, or if only the figment of my own imagination as I headed back to the city. But something inside me said that that encounter was only the beginning. The unknown was there, lurking, and I knew that one day I would have to return to face it again. The days in the city passed slowly. Memories of that encounter wouldn't leave me in peace. At work, my mind wandered back to the forest, to that creature. I wondered what it really was. Could it be an unknown species? A legend come to life? Every night as I closed my eyes, I saw the image of the creature. Those intelligent eyes, full of mysteries I couldn't unravel. The fear was real, but so was the curiosity. I knew that eventually I would have to go back. I needed to understand what I had encountered, even if it meant confronting my deepest fears. So I decided to research more about sightings of similar creatures. The stories were diverse, but there was a pattern. People in different parts of the world reported encounters with a large, hairy creature that inhabited dense forests. Most of the accounts came with detailed descriptions, all matching what I had seen. This only intrigued me further. I spoke with experts in cryptozoology who study legendary creatures. Some gave me theories, while others remained skeptical. But one thing was certain. There was much we didn't know about the world around us. This possibility both motivated and frightened me. One day, I decided it was time to return to the forest. I needed to confront my fears and perhaps discover more about that creature. This time I packed my backpack again with more supplies, and a camera was part of them. On arriving at my grandparents' house, I feeling some anxiety. Though they met me with smiles, they were not happy when I said that I would be going back to the woods. My grandfather reminded me of the tales and dangers, but I was resolute. I needed to know. The next morning, I entered the forest with a sense of déjà vu. Every sound seemed amplified, and my heart raced. I walked to the valley where I had first seen the creature, always alert to any movement. Arriving at the spot, I found those huge footprints on the ground again. I took photos, documenting every detail. My heart was racing, but curiosity outweighed fear. I stood there looking around, waiting for any sign of the creature. Time passed slowly, and nothing happened. Then I heard the sound of heavy footsteps again. My heart raced, and my body tensed. I looked towards the sound and saw the creature, standing among the trees, watching me. This time there was not just fear, but mutual curiosity. I felt like I was facing something extraordinary. The creature didn't move. It just stared at me. I took a deep breath, trying to control my fear, then decided to take a step forward. The air was almost unbearable, such was the tension in it. Another step, and the creature tilted its head, as if trying to understand me. I knew I was dealing with something beyond human understanding. I stood there, watching each other for a long time, and I don't know how long. Then suddenly, the creature turned around and vanished among the trees. I remained standing still, thinking about the incident that had just occurred. The forest, which had been previously quiet, now appeared possible. I returned home with a head full of questions. What was that creature? Why did it let me go again? Seeing me, my grandfather shook his head, as if he already knew what I had encountered. He told me that some things in life are better left as mysteries. But I knew I couldn't leave that encounter behind. The fear of the unknown was still there, but the need to understand was stronger. Every day, the memory of that creature continued to fascinate me. I needed to know more. The following nights were filled with research and reflection. I talked to more people who had similar encounters, collected reports, and continued to explore theories. Some believed these creatures were remnants of ancient species, while others thought they were just myths. To me, they were a reality that I needed to unravel. And so, my fascination with the unknown grew. Fear still existed, but now it shared space with curiosity and the desire for discovery. I knew that at some point, I would return to that forest, not just to confront my fears, but to explore the mysteries it held. The creature I encountered was just the tip of the iceberg in this world full of secrets. What was once just a forest was now uncharted territory, full of possibilities. And I, despite my fear, was ready to face whatever came next. Thanks for watching until the end. Subscribe and like so you don't miss any videos.